is ASMR Bookishness, and I am Erin. And last year, I did a video series for Pride Month where I recommended books for each letter in the alphabet soup, so LGBTQIA and Two-Spirit. And I had a lot of fun doing that, so I am going to replicate that this year. Last year I filmed like 2 videos a week, and that was too many for me with my work schedule. So this year we're gonna just do 1 a week, and we're gonna let the video series stretch 2 months long. And last year it was like every book that I had read since I started tracking on Goodreads and Storygraph. So this year I'm going to try and do just the books that I've read since June of last year, essentially. I did not go back and rewatch any of those videos, so it's possible that I will have some duplicates if I couldn't remember if it was in the old video or not. It's also possible that I just missed some, because I basically just scrolled back through Goodreads by a year. But yeah, without any further ado, let's get into lesbian book recommendations. And these are not in any particular order. They're just kind of as I grabbed them off my bookshelf. So the very first book that I want to talk about is Sky Falling by Mia Mackenzie. This book, I just finished it. I haven't done a video about my queer books from each state challenge, but I have talked about it before. So I am trying to read a book that takes place in each state in the United States, but specifically queer books. So this book takes place in Philadelphia, which is in Pennsylvania, which I have had to look up more than once because I live on the West Coast, so I can't always remember what states, what city goes in each state on the East Coast, especially the really big ones where like Philadelphia, Boston, Chicago, New York, those all feel like they should be a state, not a city. Because I could not name a single other city in any of those states. Yeah. Anyway, so Sky Falling is an absolutely delightful contemporary fiction novel featuring our main character, Sky. And she runs a successful business that allows her to travel almost constantly. She essentially leads tour groups for Black people into other countries. So when we meet her here, she is freshly back from Nigeria and about to go to Cuba. But when she is back in Philadelphia, she stays at a friend's B&B, and that friend talked her into going to an art show. And at that art show, a 12-year-old girl walks up to her and says, "I think I'm your egg." So Sky had donated an egg to a friend of hers who was infertile. And now that little girl has found her. And Sky is kind of socially a mess. Like, you can tell that she's not trying to be mean, but she's had a lot of trauma in her life, and she doesn't make great choices, but she decides when she meets this little girl that she wants to have her in her life. And the story unfolds from there. It is very black, very queer, a delightful, like, love letter to Philadelphia. I really enjoyed reading this novel. I'm very, very happy that I picked it up. And for me, that's part of the fun of the United States challenge, because it gets me to pick up a lot of books that I wouldn't necessarily have picked up on my own. I'm not a big literary fiction or contemporary fiction reader. I gravitate very heavily to fantasy and science fiction, but it is difficult to find a book that's rooted in a specific place and then add on that trying to make it a queer book. I am basically just reading whatever I come across that fits into the challenge. So that is how I ended up picking up Sky Falling, and I really liked it. Like, I might need to stop saying that I don't like literary fiction, because that might not be an accurate statement. So the next book that I have is also literary fiction, and that is Interesting Facts About Space by Emily Austen. This is the same author who wrote Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead, I think is the name of it. Yeah. So if you read that one and you liked that one, chances are good that you'll like this one, because they're very similar in that we have a single lesbian who has really severe anxiety, and it is not ruining their lives, but making their life much more difficult than it needs to be. Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead at least had a little bit of plot. This one, there is no plot here. None whatsoever. Like, the back of the book says that, as she gets into the first semi-serious romantic entanglement of her life, rather than just casually dating, she is experiencing mounting paranoia, becomes certain that someone is breaking into her house. She does have video evidence of someone entering her house, so it seemed like that was going to be the plot line, but no, I don't want to give away the ending, so it's kind of hard to say much more than that, but there was more thrill and nervousness in just reading the back of this book than there was in reading the book. So if you aren't bothered by not having a plot, you will probably enjoy this book. I ended up giving it 3 stars because I did like the characters, and I don't mind a lack of plot, but I would have liked a little bit more to actually happen in this book. Okay, next in the stack is Malice by Heather Walter. This is a young adult, first book in a duology, retelling of Sleeping Beauty. And it is from, the Wicked Witches. What is she, a witch or a prince, fairy? The fairies give blessings. I think it was a sorceress. We'll go with sorceress. The one that curses Sleeping Beauty to fall asleep. So, interesting idea. I love a retelling from the villain's perspective. I did not enjoy reading this book, though. I did it as part of a read-along with some of my internet friends, and I think mostly none of us liked it. The language is very overblown, just super, super dramatic in a way that for me was not enjoyable to read. So I did not pick up the second book in the series, and I probably never will, despite the fact that this is only halfway through the story. Like, yeah, just not a book that I liked reading. But if you do like really purple prose, overwrought language, high drama, then you probably will enjoy it. Because it had all of that in spades. Next, Siren Queen by Nevo. Now this is a book that I absolutely loved. Siren Queen takes place in pre-code Hollywood, and our main character is a Chinese American girl who wants to be a movie star. But no maids, no funny talking, no fainting flowers. So she understands that as a Chinese woman, there are certain roles that she will be typecast as, and she does not want those. This book is really fun. It is a fantasy more than a historical fiction, because in this version of Hollywood, there is like actual magic and monsters going on behind the scenes, but we're never explicitly told how it works, because we're seeing the story through Luli's eyes, and she is learning. We start with her as a fairly young child, and she's learning how the system works and how to play the game, and we are learning right along with her. It's just a wonderful story. I mean, I've never read anything by Nevo that I didn't like. But the historical fiction element makes this extra fun to me. Just generally delightful characters, fascinating plot, really good world building, that you do have to be willing to just go with it. Rather than, there's not like a lot of hand holding to get you through this story, which I think suits it really well, and I like not a lot of hand holding. So yeah, Siren Queen by Nevo. Highly, 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 highly recommend this book. Okay, these three I will talk about together because y'all have seen me talk about them ad nauseum. So this is Delilah Green Doesn't Care, Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail, and Iris Kelly Doesn't Date. So this is the Bright Falls trilogy. It is a complete trilogy now. So not only am I going to talk about them in this video, probably also going to talk about them in the bisexual representation video, because each of these stories features a lesbian and a bisexual woman getting together, which, you know, as a pansexual, I love. I was definitely like bullied by a lot of the lesbians that I dated in college. They would dump me when they found out that I was pansexual, not a lesbian. So I love reading books with bisexual representation in couples with lesbians, because it's just like healing for me that as a community we might be moving past some of the biphobia. Just my 2 cents on that one. So Delilah Green doesn't care. We have Delilah Green, a grumpy professional photographer who lives in New York, and she is back in Bright Falls, Oregon for her stepsister's wedding. She and her stepsister have a very fraught relationship. Claire, our other character here, is the stepsister's best friend, but they are very much attracted to each other. They end up kind of falling for each other in a way that is really pretty cute, but I would say that the bulk of this story is not their relationship. Like, we have a little bit of bad communication, manufactured drama, but most of this story is actually about Delilah Green and Astrid Parker and healing their relationship, which I love. So, Astrid Parker, we are in the aftermath of a wedding that got called off. So here we have Astrid Parker. She is desperately trying to revive her interior decorating business, which has slowed significantly. She is trying to live up to the standards set by her mother. And again, much like with Delilah Green, we have a story that is, yes, it is a romance, but we also have this element of healing her relationship with her mother. And then we have Jordan Everwood, who I didn't like very much the first time that I read this book. I liked her more the second time through. But yeah, soft butch, cute lesbian. She's not who I would have chosen to date, because she's kind of judgy. But that's okay. Yeah, so that's that one. And then the final book in the trilogy, this one to me is the weakest book in the trilogy. We have Iris Kelly. She's a romance author taking a hiatus from dating after finding out that her last girlfriend was married to another woman. And then we have Stefania, who, again, kind of soft butch lesbian, severe anxiety. This one is less about healing conflicts with other people as it is about, like, exploring themselves and doing their own personal growth. It just wasn't as good to me as Delilah Green, which remains my favorite in the series, but it is still good. I would still recommend it, especially if you enjoy the other two. Okay, and then I have another book series to recommend. So, Dead Girls and Harlem Sunset are books 1 and 2 by Nekesa Afia, and A Lethal Lady is book 3, and it is coming out in July. I have read it already. I got a digital ARC. Full disclosure, I do know Nekesa. We are internet friends, and I absolutely adore her. However, if I didn't like her books, I just wouldn't say anything about them. I love these books. They are mysteries set in 1920s Harlem. A Lethal Lady is set in Paris as part of the Black diaspora back to I don't actually think that diaspora is the right term there. There's a movement from the 1920s through, like, I think the late 40s, maybe even early, maybe through the 60s. I should have reread the wiki before I started talking. There's a movement of artists, and especially black artists, leaving the United States to live in Paris for a couple of decades there. James Baldwin is kind of at the tail end of that, but he is part of that black American artists moving to Paris. So our first two books take place in New York. Our third book takes place in Paris. They are following Lou, who is a young black woman. She was kidnapped as a child and ended up freeing herself and a few other kidnapped girls, which earns her the moniker the Hero of Harlem. It also earns her a great deal of trauma. And so now we meet her again as a young woman. She is working as a waitress by day. She is staying up all night, dancing and drinking in jazz clubs. It's the descriptions of her clothes and the dancing bring me a great deal of delight. So in this one, she is trying to figure out who a serial killer is, who is targeting young black women in Harlem. In Harlem Sunset, we are dealing with the aftermath of her successfully identifying the serial killer. And we have a little bit of a revenge scheme in this one. We're also kind of watching her life fall apart as she attempts to tackle the trauma that she experienced over the course of the first book. And poor Lou. Poor Lou. She suffers so much, and I just want to wrap her in a blanket and hold her until she feels better. In A Lethal Lady, she is now in Paris. She is attempting to put her whole solving mysteries life behind her. But what do you know? She gets drawn back in, trying to solve a missing person case, which turns into trying to solve a murder. I loved A Lethal Lady. I think Nikessa has really grown as an author over the course of these three books. I do think A Lethal Lady has some of my favorite writing style choices in it, and I would highly recommend all three books, especially if you like historical fiction or mysteries. I don't read a whole lot of either, but her books make me very anxious in a good way. So it's like when I want to worry about something that I know is fictional, those are the ones that I go for. Next in my stack is Carmilla. This is the seminal vampire lesbian novel by Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu. I actually have a series of videos where I read this entire book out loud for y'all because it is in the public domain. So check those out if you are interested. But essentially, Carmilla is a vampire story. I think it came out before Dracula. Credited as an inspiration for authors such as Bram Stoker and Arthur Conan Doyle. Really, if you like Gothic literature, you will like this book. It's pretty delightful. Obviously, in a book more than 100 years old, we're not getting explicit, these are lesbians, but it is pretty heavily implied in a way that's unmistakable that is what is going on. fantasy lesbian novel, Mortal Follies by Alexis Hall. This is a book that you are either gonna totally love the writing style or absolutely hate it. I have not seen a lot of like in between reviews. So this book is narrated by Puck, Robin Goodfellow, and we get modern interjections. So the idea is that our narrator is Puck, who has been kicked out of Oberon's court, is being punished by making him live as a mortal, and as a mortal, he has to pay bills. So he is writing books of people that he observed when he was still in Puck's court. I thought it was cute. I liked it. I could easily see why some people find it very obnoxious, though. But yeah, this is the story of two young women. It's set in 1814. So this is, the life, like England, pretty much exactly like our England in 1814, except that worship of the old gods never entirely went away, and they do occasionally interfere. And that is what has happened here. Our main character has been cursed by Minerva at the behest of a scorned lover, and she has to seek help to undo the curse. And let's see, Lady Georgiana Landrake, who is also cursed. I really liked it, like I said. About halfway through, for the first half, we're focused on the first curse. For the second half, we're focused on the second curse. Feels like a spoiler to say very much more than that. But yeah, I would say check it out from the library, see if the writing style jives for you. But I thought it was really funny. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. Just a couple more to go. So, this spells Disaster by Torianne Martin. This was another one that I don't remember if I actually used it for one of the states, because it was like set in New England. And then I think it turned out to be a state that I had already had. But yeah, I like a messy lesbian witch kind of story. This is Accidental Love Potion. It does lean pretty heavily on miscommunication. If our main character had just been honest from the forefront, this book would have been like 15 pages long. So that did bother me a little bit. I'm not huge into miscommunication as a trope. In fact, I kind of dislike it. But the characters in this were still pretty delightful. I enjoyed the mess of it all. I enjoyed getting to learn more about our characters. And the story was pretty cute. So, definitely, I'm pretty sure I shelved this one in romance, just not fantasy, despite the fact that it's witches. This is definitely much more a romance than it is a fantasy. Whereas like Mortal Follies, I keep this one shelved with fantasy, even though it is romance. I don't know, maybe I need to pull a romantasy section out. I think a lot about rearranging my bookshelves. It's like a near constant. I really liked it when I had them just rated by stars. so that everything behind me was 5-star books, which is not the case anymore. It kind of bothers me that there are books I don't like right behind my head. Neither here nor there. Okay, 3 more. Even Though I Knew the End by C.L. Polk. This is a novella, pretty short, pretty quick read. Our main character has sold her soul to the devil, in order to bring her brother back to life. Her brother is deeply resentful of that and no longer talks to her, and she is coming up on the end of the 10 years that she was given. So she's got like a couple days left and is offered another deal. So I really liked this book. I do think the ending was maybe just a little too neatly wrapped up. Not as tragic as the name implies, but it's a fun little, like, fantasy, mystery, sapphic relationship. Historical. It is also historical. I think it takes place in the 1920s. I don't quite remember off the top of my head anymore. But that does seem to be the decade of choice. Yeah. So, this is tracking down a serial killer kind of story. Great fun. Okay, next. A book of poetry, The Black Unicorn by Audre Lorde. This is absolutely classic. Audre Lorde is Black and a lesbian. You can tell that when you read her poetry. She is, one of the big names in Black feminist writing. I adore her. The Black Unicorn is the first of her collections of poetry that I've read. I would like to read more because they are very good. And I believe I talk about this a little bit more extensively in my video on poetry recommendations. But yes, Audre Lorde, classic. Pick her up if you haven't. If you don't like poetry, I would also highly recommend her book of essays, Sister Outsider. So good, especially the essay, I can't remember the exact title, but it's something like "You Can't Tear Down the Master's House with the Master's Tools." Something like that. That's not it, but it's good. And the last book that I have to talk about is The Color Purple by Alice Walker. This is also a classic in the Black lesbian genre. I am rereading it right now. I'm like a third of the way through. I picked it up yesterday. This was assigned reading when I was in like 7th or 8th grade. And to be honest, I didn't remember the story at all, to the point where now I'm wondering if, like, I remembered reading this book, but now I'm wondering if we just read an abridged version or just pieces of it, or if I just did not understand what I was reading, because this book jumps off right from the beginning with some heavy, heavy trauma. And that, like, domestic abuse, rape, incest, just right out of the gate. Page 1. But it's a classic for a reason. This book is so well thought out. Just amazingly insightful, feminist, just, man, I don't even know I don't even know what to say about it. But if you have any intention at all of watching the movie that's coming out this year, I would recommend also reading the book. Because compare and contrast is fun, right? That is the reason that I picked it up for a reread, because I wanted to refamiliarize myself with it before I see the movie, which may or may not be out already. I honestly don't remember. I'm not good at keeping track of movie release schedules. But yeah. Classic for a reason. I might finish it today. I might finish it tomorrow. Maybe I should have finished it before I started talking about it in here, but I really wanted to get filming this done, because if I put it off, then it wasn't going to happen, and then my schedule is going to be thrown off, and then it'd be 2 weeks before this video came out, and you know how it goes sometimes. Okay, so that is all I've got. The books about lesbians that I read this year, in the last year, since last June. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more from me, hit that subscribe button, and I will put links to last year's recommendation videos in the text if you want to check out what I did last year, because I was trying to avoid overlap. Although I do think I talked about Siren Queen last year because I read it in June. I don't think I'd finished it yet when I did that video. Alright, y'all. Have a good night. Stay safe out there.